So I want to talk about trauma and spirituality. This is going to hit differently depending on where you're at in your personal growth, your trauma healing, and your spiritual journey. So I want to preface this with, if any of this feels like too much for you, prioritize your mental health, push to the side, maybe come back to it later. So with that being said, I want to talk to you a little bit more about my own trauma healing journey, what I've learned through that, and what I want others to learn from the experiences that I've had. When it comes to trauma, I spent most of my life saying, I don't have trauma. I don't have trauma. Little did I know I had severe trauma. It all started with childhood trauma. So I grew up with emotional neglect. I really struggled as a child. I was highly, highly sensitive, and I grew up in a house and extended family that was predominantly masculine energy. So it was very dominant energy, clear hierarchy, do as I say, don't ask questions. I had learned essentially to be invisible, because when I was invisible, then I wasn't causing problems. So one of the things that I learned about myself is that I had created this inner narrative that I was the problem, it was my fault. And that's what children do when they don't have the ability to really rationalize the things that are happening around them. We create stories based on what we know. So say you're 5 years old, you're 7 years old, you don't know the difference. So in my brain, mom and dad fighting meant I made them angry, and I need to fix it, and I need to figure out a way to blend into the background and not cause problems, because I don't want to make them angry, because I couldn't handle the anger. The anger was too much for me. And that was the story that I took with me throughout my entire life and all of my relationships. So think about that. When you learn as a child to be quiet and to be invisible, and that's your inner narrative, it's subconscious, so you don't realize that this is a pattern that you're playing out. You take that into your relationships, you take that into your life, you take that into your career. What happens? You go into relationships where you don't speak up for yourself, you don't ask to have your needs met, you're embarrassed to even express yourself, so you're meek, you're quiet, you pretend to be invisible. That is spiritual trauma. You are dulling your authenticity, and you're shoving your authentic self down further and further and further. And it creates this disconnect where you don't know who you are anymore. You go into your career, you choose a career maybe that your parents wanted for you. You choose a career that is the right thing to do based on society. You go to college, you get a degree. All of these decisions that you make are based on everything else around you. That creates this spiritual disconnect between yourself and a higher power. And eventually you get to the point where you may question a higher power entirely because of so much pain. And I did. I lost my best friend. She was on her way to college in 2006, and she passed away tragically, suddenly, in a car accident. 2 years later, I became a young widow. He was my soulmate. He held my hand when I mourned the loss of my best friend. And I've told this story so many times, I'm surprised I'm getting choked up. He held my hand through all of it. When he passed away, I challenged God. I'm like, how could there be a God? How could there be a God who would do this to a person? I just lost the two people that I'd ever felt comfortable with after childhood trauma, not having anyone. How could this happen? My life spiraled until the point where I attempted to take my own life. Fortunately, I was unsuccessful. I am still here. I am grateful for the lessons that I learned. And it wasn't until I was actually in the psych ward, was the very first time that I had ever learned that I could challenge my own thoughts. My inner narrative was so toxic and was so heavy. I loathed myself to the core for no reason. There was no real reason. I felt like the worst human being alive. I started to realize after a lot of healing, I just felt like a terrible human being, which came from being raised by a mother who wasn't able to show me the love that I wanted and I craved because of her trauma, because of the struggles that she had. I had internalized that as like, this is my fault. My inner narrative, my subconscious was very, very heavy. So fast forward, as I'm going through all of this trauma, I build a life from this trauma. I make decisions from this trauma. I get into relationships, all of it based on trauma. And what does that do to you spiritually? You get to a point in life where you feel absolutely lost. You feel out of control. You feel confused. You're anxious, and then at some point maybe you decide to heal. And that's what I started to do. It was 15 years in therapy, taking medication, taking my anti-anxiety medication, my depression medication, my supplements, doing yoga, doing mindfulness, doing meditation, doing everything. I still felt stuck. 15 years later, my body kept deteriorating. Every year, year after year, I would get a new diagnosis: IBS, endometriosis, fibromyalgia, degenerative disc disease, arthritis in my hips. This was between 30 and 38, mind you. Well, before I was 40 years old. My list of diagnoses kept getting longer and longer and longer. So then at a point at 38, I had been in therapy, I'd done all of the things, and I became bedridden. My body was deteriorating. It was giving out on me. I couldn't move. I couldn't take care of myself. Couldn't feed myself. Couldn't bathe myself. I couldn't do anything. It took over a year to get a diagnosis, and I was diagnosed with a neurological disorder. Turns out was a manifestation of a lot of the dysfunction that had been happening in my body and my emotions on my nervous system and my brain. Once that started to sink in, my passion for learning and for healing and for growth really took over. And I'm like, I want to know what's happening. Doctors at that point, there was no more medication. Like, we can't give you any more medication. You're maxed out on medication. There's nothing else we can really do for you. Sorry about your luck. And I wasn't willing to accept that as an answer. I had a small daughter. I'm not even 40 years old. This is not okay. Like, I need answers. And I started studying. I dove deep into neuroscience, into trauma, even quantum physics and quantum healing. As I started to learn and understand these things, I was peeling off layers that I didn't realize I still had. That's when I went through my second dark night of the soul. The first one happened when I became a widow. This one didn't think it could be worse than it was. What was happening, and I didn't realize it, was a spiritual awakening that I had no idea was coming, but I'm positive spiritual guides were leading me to. All of the things I had gone through up until that point that had felt like God wasn't taking care of me, God didn't care about me, God didn't like me, God didn't love me, none of it was true. It was all about how I was perceiving my life and misunderstanding, which I think is part of the journey here. It's part of our soul's journey here. When I was in the midst of it, if you would have told me that was a spiritual gift, I would have said yourself, like, no. So again, if any part of this is too much to hear right now and you're not at that part of your journey, I completely understand, because I was there too. I get it. I believe our souls come here with a mission. My soul came here wanting the master class in growth. Do you know what the ultimate teacher is? Pain. Pain is a teacher. It teaches us because it forces us into either changing or not changing, and we deal with the pain, but pain ultimately is a teacher. My soul wanted the master class and said, I'm ready for it. I think there's a lot more to it. That's the shortest way to say it. I'll do another video on, but I know my soul was here for it. But my soul came here wanting to be able to come back to love, regardless of how much I had been hurt, regardless of the rejection that I had felt. My soul wanted to learn how to come back to love over and over again. And as a starseed, my soul knew love, and all the craving deep within me and all of that tenacity to keep pushing was my soul, was my truth that actually kept me going. And I didn't know what it was. Like, there were times when, like, I'm delusional. Why do I keep trying? This is to the point where I feel like I'm delusional because how much I'm trying. Just a quick note, if you're enjoying this video, please make sure you like and subscribe. It was my soul that knew that there was more. It was my soul that was calling me to keep looking for answers. And at every step of the way, I would get to this point where I would think I would find answers, and then something else would come crumbling down. Couldn't understand it. I kept trying to make sense of it, and it didn't. For a long time, it did not make sense. Until I got to, I suspect, a baseline of where other people might start. My nervous system started to heal as I started to learn about somatic healing and healing the biological impact of trauma on my body. And as I started peeling away the layers and layers and layers of the trauma that had accumulated in my physical body, I started to see the truth. And everything, the gates just opened up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it all makes sense. I suspect that's where more and more people are coming upon. And if you're here, maybe you're kind of at the cusp of that. And I want to tell you some of the things that helped me get through it were working on my spiritual connection with my guides, getting into nature, healing my biology. We live in a world that is not built for most humans, frankly. Some of us are far more sensitive to this world. I believe it's the starseeds that are more sensitive, and here's why. Because your body comes here, and in order for you to be more sensitive, which is your gift and what you bring to this world, and it's part of how you are able to help the collective healing, your energy is more open. So if you're a projector in the human design, which I suspect many starseeds are, you receive energy. You don't have the same motor centers that 80% of the population does. That means you receive all of this energy. It makes you more vulnerable to trauma. Trauma literally changes your cells. And what it does is it creates dysfunctional patterns in your body. So you can see the pattern of what's happening. We come here as sensitive souls because that's the gift, and that's what we need to embrace in order to be part of the collective healing. But it's also what can keep us stuck and feeling sick. Once you start to understand this and you're able to start peeling off the layers of the things that our human world has taught us, that we have to live in a hustle culture, that we have to force ourselves to do something that we absolutely hate to survive and to get by, that we have to wear a mask and pretend to be something that we're not so we can be accepted. All of these things are killing our spirit. We're not meant to live this way. And when you're a sensitive soul, it makes it that much harder for you to survive because you know that you're not meant to live this way, and it hurts you. It physically, mentally, and emotionally hurts you. But here's the thing, because you're part of a smaller population, you can feel very alone with these feelings. That's why I started sharing, because I don't want other people to feel alone. And I truly believe the collective healers, the ones that are self-healers, we are healing ourselves. And as we heal ourselves, we create a ripple effect into healing the world. As we heal ourselves, we are helping to heal this collective consciousness of this planet so that we can continue to awaken. When you embrace your true, authentic spiritual self and your sensitivity and your love and all the things that you know to be true inside of you, that's when you shine brighter. Heal your physical body, your physical form starts to heal. That's when you strengthen your spiritual connection and you can hear your spiritual guides. There was a long time where I would hear people and I would see people talking about their spiritual connection, or I would see psychics and I'm like, that seems so cool. I'll never be able to do that. And I truly believed that that was for other people, but there was something inside of me, again, that I couldn't understand why I was called to it so deeply. I was being called to it so loudly because it's an innate skill that I have as well. I didn't understand it, and I was so far away from it that I craved it and I yearned for it, but I didn't know how to tap into it. So if you have felt that, you feel something, but you're not sure what it is. You resonate with the idea of spiritual guides. You resonate with the idea of psychic abilities. You resonate deeply with all of these spiritual concepts, but you felt disconnected from it. I promise you that you are heading in the right path, and Spirit is trying to work through you to get you to open up these gifts. And do you want to know how it's doing it? It's trying to get you to listen to your body. Your emotions and physical sensations in your body are Spirit trying to guide you. Do you ignore your emotions? Do you shove down those difficult emotions? Do you do things and not set boundaries when it feels icky, but you do it anyways? Are you constantly saying yes to things when you really don't want to? All of those emotions, all of those feelings that you're bypassing, that you're shoving down, you're ignoring Spirit. The more you ignore Spirit and the more you shove it down, the harder it will be to listen. A huge piece of taking the next step in your spiritual growth and your awakening is the listening to your body. And the beauty of this is as you listen to your body, you begin to heal your body. That's part of the science of healing from trauma, reconnecting to your body. Trauma inherently disconnects us from our body as part of our evolution, as a way to keep us safe. But it does a disservice because we're not living in the same time as our ancestors. They weren't doing a lot of thinking about what they're going to cook for dinner, or did they respond to that text message, or their boss is calling them on the phone and wonder what this is about. We live in a different world, yet our brain and our body don't understand. So our body is operating in the same way that it did when we thought we were going to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. The brain and the body are incredibly complex and beautiful and amazing. And we also need to learn how to work with our body and the way it operates. It traps trauma because it's trying to protect us. So how do we work with our brain and our body to allow it to release this trauma and let our body know that it's actually safe? And that's part of what I teach in my programs, The Collective Healers. It's the science of healing from trauma. I specifically have a program called Biohacking Trauma, where I walk you step by step through the process of understanding how trauma has impacted your brain and your body and how you can release those layers, give your body the room it needs to grow and heal. Because once you do, you start to align your energetic frequency so that you can take the next steps into your spiritual awakening. If you want to learn more about biohacking trauma, I'll make sure to include the link below. Also, make sure you check out thecollectivehealers.com and other ways to work with me. Thank you for tuning in today. And if you liked this video, I hope you will give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe and check out some more videos on this channel. Sending you so much love.